All right, what's going on, everybody? We're back again with another one of these. Today, we are going to be going over both the Arlong Park arc and the Logtown arc, which are two fan favorites, honestly. They're two of the early arcs that end up having a really big role and just general importance to the rest of the story, just the more you progress through it. You'll hear a lot of people say that if you make it to Arlong Park in One Piece, you're going to be hooked from that point forward. Lots of reasons that's true, but we're going to try to go over some of that in detail today.
Yeah, and I will say if you are starting watching the show and you are at this point, genuinely watch these episodes. Like, I feel like you can kind of skim them or want to skim them and just kind of like watch and be like, oh yeah, like whatever, just keep going through episodes as you have been. Because that was like my inclination at first. Because I wasn't like fully hooked yet. Like, I was invested in this show because I knew I'd committed, but like I wasn't like on the crew yet.
You weren't a honorary Straw Hat
Not yet.
Not yet?
Not
Oh,
yet.
okay.
So, but then looking back, there's like so many Easter eggs and things I feel like I could have caught in the beginning if I had paid more attention. So,
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the show does do a good job of giving you the flashbacks where that's necessary, just to make sure you don't miss that kind of stuff. But I think it's cooler, like the stuff that you do remember, before you even see the flashback, when you can kind of connect the pieces just for later down the road, just to be able to do that mentally. It's really cool. There's a bunch of stuff that stems from these two. But yeah, let's go ahead and get started with Arlong Park, because we left off with the Barati arc in the last video we did here. Right. So we were pretty much left up with Nami peacing out on the Mary.
Yeah. So Nami's gone. She took the Mary. And now we have Luffy, Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp have to go get it back because the Mary's part of the crew. So they can't leave without her, meaning they have to hunt Nami down.
Yeah. When they first get there, I will say we're introduced to one of those, I guess it's a species or like a race in the show, where it kind of plays into that whole cartoony, like otherworldly style of world building that we were talking about Oda doing beforehand. And when I first started watching this, I was still getting used to the One Piece art style and how the world was being built. I was still a little iffy at this point, not gonna lie. I saw the fishmen and I was like, what are we doing here? Like, what is this?
The fishmen are something, and they hate humans, which is like, and again, it's kind of like, you don't know why, really, and they kind of give you like a little bit of a backstory, but not really, and not really.
Yeah, and I think it's good that they kind of leave it ambiguous. So they have this really passionate hatred for humans. And I think the underlying like story or meaning behind why the fishmen are written in that way is really cool, and you get to that. But I think the fishmen just help with the world building, even though they're such an obscure character to write in. They don't feel cartoony the more you get used to them in the show. They actually feel like they have a place and they fit into the overall like world that's being built as you go through.
Yeah, but I guess we should explain why we run into fishmen in the first place.
Yeah.
So they go after Nami, and Nami, you come to find out, is kind of like working for the fishmen under duress. Like, she doesn't really want to, but you're introduced to her tragic backstory throughout the course of Arlong Park, because she started working for the Arlong Pirates, Fishmen Pirates. Arlong Pirates?
Are
they Fishmen Pirates or Arlong Pirates?
Oh, geez.
To be fact-checked.
To be fact-checked. One of the two.
She's working for Arlong because she had this like trauma happen to her, and basically they realized that she had a talent for drawing maps, and she's really good at navigation. So Arlong was like, all right, you can work for me as my navigator until you earn 100 million berries to free yourself. So that's how she becomes a thief, is she's trying to get these 100 million berries to give to Arlong so that she can buy her freedom back.
Which is really what explains all of that thievery and stuff that they were really highlighting that we talked about in the first 3 episodes, because you don't really know why she's doing that up until this point, other than the fact that she's just a thief.
Hates pirates, yeah. So she's stealing money from pirates, and you think she just hates pirates, but it comes to turn out, like, the dealing of money, she has a goal behind it. So the Arlong pirates came into her hometown. They hate humans, so they were very, like, destructive, manipulative. Okay, so they're very destructive, manipulative, and then they actually end up killing her mother figure, Bellamere, who takes care of her and her sister.
Yeah.
So it's like this huge trauma, really dramatic, and they have taken over her hometown. And if she gives them the 100 million berries, I also think they've agreed that they would free the town, too.
Right, which right off the bat, I think is easy to kind of piece the puzzles together, especially while you're watching the show. You get all the context clues here that Arlong has no intention of doing any of the above. He is just a insufferable fish person. Fish person.
Yeah. Fish man. Trying to be politically correct with the fish man. It's
right.
good.
right. And his actual backstory you get much later. So a lot of the reasons why what he does and why he is the way he is, you get later into the show, funnily enough. But at the time, he's basically just an insufferable pirate. Like, he's just taking out revenge on all these humans, and he pretty much just seems like he's not going to stop at anything. But I think the cool part with Arlong Park, and I think the reason why a lot of people end up falling in love with it, is that this is the first time that you really get to see the Straw Hats in action and like actually fight. And we're talking like everybody working together as a team type of fighting.
Right. So we've had like bits and pieces of different people, and I guess they fight a little bit with like Usopp's backstories. They fight the Black Cat pirates, but it was good. But like, I feel like this is the first major fight, and like, you know, Jake said, they really come together to kind of work as a team.
Yeah, I feel like most of the fighting has been isolated at this point. Like, you see Zoro versus Mihawk, really cool, very fun, really only Zoro. You get to see Sanji fight a little bit in the Barati arc, but it's really just Sanji. Luffy fights the one guy from the Grand Line in the Barati arc, but it's also very brief, and they're not really like all fighting together yet. And I don't think that Luffy's really been tested yet up until this point. Most of his fights have kind of just been him pummeling people.
Right, yeah. This is like the first point where you start to see that the Straw Hats start facing challenges. So something cool that One Piece does that I don't think a lot of shows do really well is the Straw Hats fail a lot. And like, you can realize, especially early on in a lot of these arcs, that they are not strong enough to accomplish what they're all setting out to accomplish. Which is really interesting because you know a lot of changes have to happen in order for them to, like, for like Luffy to become the Pirate King. He needs to be a lot stronger, and you're like, how is that going to happen? And this is the first point where you kind of see that, like, they face opponents that they are not really equipped to handle. And there are a lot of times where you're like, I don't know if they're going to make it out of this at this point.
Yeah, and I think one thing that's interesting that I feel like is it's not like directly highlighted in Arlong Park, but it's at least like kind of trying to convey the idea is Luffy's like trustingness of his friendships, where Nami is trying to almost just say like, leave me alone, like let me deal with this by myself, like I got myself into this mess, I need to fix it. And Luffy realizes that Nami's not strong enough to do that. And he can see Arlong's intentions, that he's never going to let her go.
Yeah.
And obviously we'll get to the one really iconic scene, but, you know, it's that almost obliviousness of Luffy where he's just like, no, I'm going to do this because you need my help, and I'm going to do it because I want to.
Yeah,
and even if it's going to be really hard and it might not work out for me, like, this is what I'm going to do. So I feel like this is the first time that you kind of see that like blind ignorance of Luffy. Like, he doesn't know how he's gonna fix it, but he's just gonna try.
Yeah, I think so a question I had about Luffy really early on was like, why does his crew follow him? Because he is such an idiot. He's so dumb. And like, his motivations in life are like Pirate King and meat. And that's like it. But then this is like the first arc where you see that he is so loyal and fights so hard. Well, I guess you kind of see it like along the way as he gets each crew member, but like it really just kind of emphasizes it. Okay, you're like starting to see why people follow him, because he gives his all for his friends, because he wants them to like succeed and remain his friend, and he wants to be there for them as much as like he wants them to be there for him. I think I said that right. Yeah, but yeah, so there's just like a cool moment where you kind of start to see like why people would follow Luffy, even though he's the world's biggest idiot at this point.
He is, and I think a real big like first step of deep character development for Luffy is in Arlong Park. And it's probably the most iconic scene. We'll have to throw it up on screen, but it kind of is one of the initial backtrack reflections. So I know in the last video we showed the clip of Shanks putting the straw hat on Luffy, and Luffy's crying as he puts it on him. And that's basically what happens here, is Luffy is taking the role of Shanks in this, and Nami's breaking down, and he, puts the straw hat on Nami's head and basically says, no, I'm going to do this because I'm your friend.
Yeah, so Nami kind of finally comes to the realization that she was never going to get her freedom to begin with, and has a breakdown. Luffy like asks her to hang on to his hat for safekeeping, and she's like on the ground sobbing, and he puts the hat on her and goes off to fight. And it's just like the first chilling goosebump moment where you're like, what? It's like, that was so crazy to see, because you already know at this point like how meaningful Luffy's hat is to him, and it comes up over and over again throughout the show. He'll like lose it or forget it or something, and then he's like, where's my hat? Like, he can't not. So you already know at this point how important it is to him. I mean, they're the Straw Hat Pirates. So just putting it on her, even though she's not an official crewmate yet, like, you really get to see that he finds her very important and trusts her already, even though she really hasn't given him a reason to trust her.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
She kind of notices that too. Like, she's like, whoa, he's really gonna go off and fight for me, and I stole their ship. Like, what? A really iconic moment.
I think the other really big moment, I guess we'll get to that in 1 second, but to move from that point to the fights, I think it's cool to see. I think this is one of the first gauges of, you can see just how strong Sanji and Zoro are as pieces of the Straw Hats, because one thing that we haven't talked about, so if you haven't watched the show, fishmen are just inherently ridiculously strong. They're just very strong. They're very fast swimmers. They're just a lot more physically capable than humans are. And you get to see a little bit of demonstrations of that with like some of the background of Arlong terrorizing that town. I want to say it's like Kokoyasi or something, which is
I think that's the name
now
of the town.
Arlong Park at the time. And you get to see like Soro, that's a new character. Sanji and Zoro hold their own against some of the Arlong pirates. Actually, not hold their own, but kind of throw a beat down on them. And Zoro ends up fighting a fishman called Hachi, who Hachi doesn't go away for a while. So Hachi's going to be a character that shows up again in later arcs.
But you
don't
don't know really. Like, there's no thing that would lead you to believe that he'd come back, so it's kind of like just a random plot thing, but we'll let you get there when you get there.
he does come back, so he's not a throwaway character, which is, I was shocked when I saw him. But moving, I honestly, I needed the show's little recap to remind me
the narrator comes in clutch sometimes. The 7-minute recaps sometimes can be a lot, but every now and then they get you good.
They do.
Remember when? And you're like, no, I didn't.
You're like, no, I didn't, because that was 500 episodes ago.
Right.
Kind of the end of this arc is, Nami ends up joining, right? But the real, like, climax, I feel like, and other kind of chilling moment is the turning point in Arlong and Luffy fighting each other. So like we previously mentioned, Luffy really struggles against Arlong. Arlong's a very notorious pirate. He was on the Grand Line. He's a fishman, so he's inherently really strong. Luffy hasn't fought somebody like this before, so he's really, really pushing Luffy, and it kind of comes down to like one final blow, and the whole like building kind of like shatters.
Yeah.
And everybody that's watching, I think it even flashes to Nami, and you can see like Nami basically goes white. She's like, oh no, like Luffy's dead, and now Arlong's really mad. Now I'm probably dead.
Yeah.
But it ends up with Luffy like, you know, breaking through the whole thing, and he's like, he just yells from the rubble and the dust. He's like, Nami, you're my friend.
Yeah,
and it's a really cool moment.
He's the one who comes out. Which, is this the point where he punches Arlong? Does he punch him upwards? I forget how he attacks him. But
Can't remember.
yeah, him beating Arlong is really memorable. Kind of his first big victory.
Yeah, it is his first big victory.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, they're close to losing on like several occasions, and I think at one point Luffy ends up in the water, which he always does.
Yeah.
Put some floaties on that guy. Jeez.
Yeah. And that's pretty much Arlong Park.
But anyways, okay, next they go on to Loguetown.
Yes, and Loguetown is a little bit of a dance with spoilers, so you don't really know a lot. There's a lot of stuff in Loguetown that comes back up later in the show.
Yes,
and
like Easter egg galore. Like it seems irrelevant. Like Loguetown seems irrelevant because he fights some people, but he doesn't like take any major victories away from Loguetown or anything. So you just get introduced to some people that become significantly important later on.
Yeah, which I would say one of the two is Smoker, who is one of the Navy, I believe he's a captain at this point.
At this point, he is a captain.
Yeah, he's Captain Smoker, and Smoker introduces a very important concept within the Devil Fruit power scaling system and just how they operate. So Smoker's fruit is the smoke fruit, which makes sense, right? But in particular, he introduces the concept of Logia-type fruits. And what Logia-type fruits are, essentially you become like the element of the fruit. So he is a smoke person, so he can turn his body into smoke. And this kind of... You get to grasp this a little bit in how the show's power scaling eventually is going to end up playing out, because Luffy kind of fights Smoker in Loguetown for a period of time, and it's really hard to wrap your head around how they're going to get around the idea of Logia fruits, because you instantly see that, and then if you start doing the math in your head, you're like, well, Luffy can't hit Smoker at all.
Yes.
Like, so is it just kind of a lottery about just getting the best devil fruit? You don't really understand how that works yet. So that's a really cool concept that's brought up.
But yeah, so, and another thing that you kind of get introduced to pretty early, or in this arc, is the idea of sea prism stones. So, one of the things that happens before Luffy actually fights Smoker is Buggy kind of snatches him up and puts him on the platform where Goldie Roger was executed. So they go to Loguetown, Luffy goes to see the platform, Buggy, like, I think tricks him and then puts him in sea prism cuffs, which basically, like, negate devil fruit powers. So we get the idea of sea prism stone, and then, like, by, like, a weird twist of fate, Luffy is able to actually escape being executed. So lightning, like, strikes the platform, he falls, Buggy falls, and everyone who was watching, like, sees Luffy basically get out of this seemingly, like, impossibly escapable scenario, and he gets away.
Importantly, too, right before he's about to be executed, he yells that he's going to be king of the pirates.
Yeah.
He's in the shackle thing, like he's got his, like, all whatever, and he yells that he's going to be king of the pirates. And importantly, we don't know who at this point, but how he's saved is that lightning strike. We don't know if it is because of this person or what, but there's a weird, like, cutscene as the lightning strikes, knocks the tower over, and he's freed to a person that's in a hood.
Yeah, like a mysterious character. So, and I also think the character helps him get away from Smoker. So once Luffy's running away, he runs into Smoker, who's, like, seeing this whole thing go down, and like, I don't know how they know about Luffy at this point, because did he get his bounty before Loguetown, like in between Arlong Park and Loguetown, or after Loguetown?
Actually, that is something that we probably should have touched on in
he gets his first... Okay.
Yeah, so in Arlong Park.
After Arlong Park, Luffy gets his first wanted poster. I don't know why. I was trying to hold up a wanted poster, but you can't see it. So, all right. So after Arlong Park, Luffy gets his first wanted poster. It's a 30 million berry bounty. He thinks it's hilarious because he's, I don't know, wanted by the Navy. He's just like, I'm on my way to be a pirate. So anyways, yeah, that's why the Navy's even interested in him to begin with. So Smoker sees this thing going down, but then he sees Luffy escape. So he obviously goes after him because the Navy wants to catch the pirates with the bounties. Surprise. And they start fighting. Luffy's having an incredibly hard time because you can't hit Smoke with a punch or a kick.
That's true.
Which is all Luffy can do at this point. And then I think the mysterious figure helps him escape from Smoker too. So we don't know who they are or what they're doing, but they somehow distract Smoker enough that Luffy's able to escape and get away from Loguetown.
Yep.
So really it's kind of like Loguetown. I wouldn't necessarily describe it as a mini arc, but it doesn't have a ton of plot other than introducing important features for later plots, really.
Yeah. It's one of those where if you paid attention, you'd be not really sure what I got away from there, other than maybe a couple of Navy characters and Buggy's out of his mind.
Yeah,
but
but we knew that. That's not new.
Right, that's not really new information. But then you the more you watch the show, because there's more than what we just talked about that comes back, that ties into Loguetown. There's so much that you go back and you'll see those. They do, we mentioned before, they do those little replays of scenes from way early in the show, Loguetown for example, and you'll go back and you'll be like, what in the world? They wrote that into the show 10 plus years ago, and now they're grabbing a character from Loguetown. What?
I was just gonna say, there is somebody supposedly, and I don't know if it's actually in the Loguetown episodes. I don't know if you can see him in the crowd. It would be insane if you could.
I think it is.
But supposedly he was there at Loguetown, and he comes back later. And we just finished, we said last time, we just finished Dressrosa. We were at the end and we just finished it now. He comes back in Dressrosa. Potentially my favorite character of all time. He is so funny. So I kind of want to go back and see if I can see him, because I can't believe I missed him the first time. But yeah, so things like that. Yeah. But I think they bring up the idea of warlords again and talk about the 7 warlords. So you kind of start to get more familiar. It's world building still, but you're adding more plot and planting the seeds for things that are going to be important later on. But it's just crazy because I think, I don't know, what is this, 130 episodes in is Loguetown or something?
No, it's only about 50.
Really?
Yeah, it's only about 50
serious?
episodes in, yeah.
I have no timing whatsoever. But anyways, you just get it's just so crazy retrospectively looking back and just thinking about how there was all this really important information. So Dressrosa's in the 700s, and we just finished that, and there was stuff from Loguetown in it, which is absolutely insane to me.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, it's
crazy.
Unreal.
It's cool to look back on it. I will say the one thing that that definitely stood out to me now looking back is I remember talking to Zane just about the Logia fruits, because everything that you've seen up until that point, devil fruits gave you a weird kind of edge, and then you learn about the fact that there's other types of devil fruits, because at this point you have your gears turning. You're okay, well, how do you get to be the strongest? Is it just your devil fruit? Do you just get lucky and eat the right devil fruit? We've seen people that are really strong that we don't know if they even have devil fruits. So you're just really confused, I feel but confused in a good way, how you get to be stronger in this world.
It starts sparking your questions. This is the point where you start getting curious about what's going on. So you start to understand the depth of the show. You understand that there's pirates, navy, but then you're introduced to the warlords at the Barati, and then now again at Loguetown, and then you were introduced to fishmen, which was another race, which was also interesting because you're okay, interesting. There's obviously political things happening in this world building. There's like disparities and things that start like inequities and stuff. Like the story doesn't get deep yet, but they start planting the seeds to make it really deep. And I think like they still get your attention in at this point by like making the characters funny. Like Buggy coming back and trying to kill Luffy was like just like silly, but then him getting like shocked by lightning and like fried to a crisp is hilarious. So and then like you get introduced to like Navy captains and things and start to understand like their strength, but then you also like start to realize that like the captains are not the cream of the crop, and if Luffy's struggling with captains, like he's gonna struggle with anybody above them, right? So, and if the warlords are supposed to like be as good as like admirals, and then I don't know when the emperors get introduced.
Not for a really long
Okay,
time.
so at this point you're only familiar with warlords and the Navy characters, but you start to just wonder how in the world is Luffy ever going to take on these guys if he's struggling. He struggled with Arlong, and then now he's struggling with Smoker, who is a devil fruit user, which Arlong did not have a devil fruit.
Arlong did not have a devil fruit.
Yeah, so he was just pure strength.
Not that Oda needs like any pats on the back. I feel like it's not like very controversial to talk about his storytelling, but he does a really, really good job of, you know, formulating that typical shonen, because One Piece is a shonen, but at the same time, it's not your standard shonen at this point. It's not Naruto, where I was a huge Naruto fan, and Naruto's still a fantastic show, but I feel like a lot of Naruto's plot revolves around, you know, consistently just the power scaling, right? So it's all about power scaling in Naruto, continuing to power scale along with the show, whereas One Piece does not follow that formula.
No.
It deviates, and the world around where they're at just feels a lot more immersive. There's always just random things happening around them. They're more in a world than the world revolves around them, which really, really kind of starts to piece together at this point in the story.
I still think like it can be a little confusing like where they are. So their idea is to go to the Grand Line. They're not there yet. And then once they get on the Grand Line, they'll like go the whole Grand Line, right? So that's the main goal. So they're still in technically what's like considered like the front half of everything. They haven't made it to the Grand Line yet. They're still outside of that at all these towns along the way. And they keep telling you that like once they get to the Grand Line, it's going to get worse. So you really just have no idea how they're going to prepare themselves to face anything after this point once they get deeper into it. So
that's pretty much it between those two arcs. That's a lot of the key things.
Yeah, they were good. So ultimately, let's give them a rating, because I feel like these are like reviews, right? So we got to give them a rating. These numbers are going to be totally arbitrary because I have the worst time conceptually rating things, but we're going to give them a 10 with a decimal place.
Okay.
We could do
single decimal point.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to give a real hot take. This is going to get opinionated, less reviewy.
Oh, God. Okay.
I feel like Arlong Park is commonly said, like I said at the very beginning, it's the point where you have to fall in love with the show. I see why. Don't necessarily agree. I think it gets better. I was not entirely sold at the Arlong Park point. I was very interested, not completely sold. I'm going to give Arlong Park a 7.9.
Oh, that was higher than I thought you were going to say. I have similar thoughts, however, my scoring is much meaner. I was going to give it a 6.7.
Ooh.
I think it's better than like, like 5 is like an like you're just like, it was whatever. Like I was more like, I was intrigued, I thought it was interesting, and it's the first big win for Luffy, which I think is a big deal. And looking back though, I have more appreciation for the Nami scene and such, but a lot of the other arcs like captivated my attention throughout more. There were a lot of times where I felt like I just was kind of like putting the show on and just like letting it go.
That's fair.
Which is maybe on me, but
that's fair.
That would be that. All right, Loguetown.
Ooh, Loguetown's a tough one because it's so quick. It's not as iconic and encapsulating. I would say in terms of importance, I would score it much higher than my opinion. I will say though, I'm going to give this one like a 7.1. Because there was a lot of things that I think really started to grip me, not intellectually, but just like from a curiosity point of view. Like I got much more curious about the world of One Piece after Loguetown than I was during Arlong Park. Arlong Park was a better story, but its place in the show, I got a lot more hooked from Loguetown. I thought Buggy was funny. all that good stuff. But like I said, the Logia fruits, interesting. Warlords, okay, we're starting to see there's a lot of stuff above Luffy. Just a lot of like ways to build off of it. So I was intellectually curious after Loguetown.
I'll give it a 6.9. It is short, and I don't think in terms of plot, again, it's not as like captivating your interest, but the importance, if I were to scale it importance out of 10, I would literally give it like a 9.5. Like, I just think it has that many pieces where you're like, it doesn't even like tell you anything big. It's just like all these things that keep coming back that you're like, wow, I can't believe like that's what that meant. I just totally missed that, like blah, blah, blah. So I think because I think it's more important, I give it a 6.9. And we have another guest start today because I think we're gonna have a new animal every week. Come here, buddy.
This
is Maru.
The One Piece Zoo.
That's a high score, Maru.
That was.
Is that how you feel?
That was a pretty high score for Loguetown. Are you sure?
Well, you heard it here. Maru has those things to say. Thanks for your opinion, buddy. Well, thank you guys for watching. If you watched the second one because you liked the first one, very thank you. We'll keep doing these because we just have fun with it. It's a good time for us.
Yeah. We'll keep going through most of these. Eventually, we'll get to the point where these are probably going to end up being single arc videos because the arcs are going to start getting much longer as we move through these. But we're going to try to do these on a weekly basis. So likes, comments, subscribes, anything of the nature helps the channel, and appreciate it all. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, guys. Maru says bye.